And welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian, and I'm streaming to you from beautiful sunny Budapest. I hope everybody is having a good weekend. And in this class, we are looking at the IELTS exam, and this is a question and answer session. Also, we say Q&A session in natural English. To unravel the Ielts, it means to understand the Ielts clearly and maybe clear up some confusions and some misunderstandings about the exam. Hi, Tito. So this is a members chat class. These Q&A classes are for members. Of course, everybody is welcome to watch, and I will host a speaking part 3 for the speaking section class in about 90 minutes. So make sure to stay tuned or come back for that. I'm feeling great, Tito. Hope you're doing well also. Tito, start thinking about questions regarding the IELTS exam while I go through the intro. Here we go, students. While we wait for some more members to join in, this class is presented to you by aehelp.com. For academic IELTS, be sure to check us out there. Get our 6 original practice tests, over 100 hours of video lessons, and a fully interactive course. Hi, Rajveer. And for general IELTS, check us out at gieltshelp.com. That's generalieltshelp.com, where we have loads and loads of materials for you, which focus on the general version of the test. Rajveer, this is our Q&A session that we do every couple of weeks. So Rajveer, if you have some questions regarding the IELTS, now's a good time to think about them. I will ask for them in just a moment. This is our academic web portal here. Of course, you can find lots of answers to questions through our forums, blogs. You can contact us. And to get the premium account, click that big red button to join. And for the general version, it's the green background here. And again, click that big red button to join us there. All right. So you can get our apps from your app store, Academic IELTS Help and General IELTS Help. You can link your apps to their respective websites. Of course, academic to aehelp.com, general IELTS help to gieltshelp.com, and then you can learn from the same account using the website and the app for a really fantastic learning experience. Hi, Elena. So again, Elena, this is a Q&A session, so now's your chance to ask me about the IELTS exam, about English, about our products, whatever comes to mind, okay? All right. So a little bit more. Tito, I see your question coming up, and that's great. I will get to that. I see it's a good question. If anybody's looking for our books and wants to order them in paper, hard copy version, go to Amazon, search for AE Helps Academic IELTS or GE Helps General IELTS. All right. So again, question and answer session right now. And then in 90 minutes, speaking part 3. And let's get into it. I see that Tito has a good question to start. I think that's a really good question, Tito, and I don't think anybody's actually asked that one in these Q&A sessions. So Tito is asking, Tito's question is, how much lexical resource do we need to pass 7.5 band in IELTS? That's a really good question, Tito. So what or how much, I think, is even better, Tito. So we'll keep with that. How much lexical resource do I need to get band 7.5 in the IELTS exam? That's a fantastic question. Another way, of course, you can think about it is how much vocabulary. Okay, so the answer is actually quite complex, Tito. So here's a good question. How many words do you think a native English speaker uses on average in a 24-hour period? What do you think? So even if you give me a range, it's okay. So in a 24-hour period, a native English speaker uses what range of vocabulary on average? And there's actual science that studied this in English, and we do have some pretty accurate numbers. Okay. Rajveer, there is electronic versions for Kindle, and there's also a hard copy that you get as a physical book to your home. Okay. So Tito says 200. No, a little bit more, Tito. So it's so think about this, okay? So I'm going to give you a few different pieces of information here. So the average native English speaker uses a vocabulary base of about 500 to 600 words in a day. Okay, so that's about how many words you need to kind of start communicating. Now, here's something really important, Tito, to think about, and students, okay? Super, super important. I'm going to do 3 stars and I'm going to do 3 exclamation marks just to start it off. When you talk about using vocabulary, so when you think about using vocabulary or a lexical resource, you must think of it as being able to understand it and use it in writing and speech dynamically in different contexts and accurately. Okay, I'm going to get to your answer here, Tito. I know I haven't given you the perfect number yet, but it's on purpose because I'm afraid, Tito, that if I just say the number, people will be like, oh, okay, so that's how many words I have to study, and I'm going to learn them, and then I'll get a 7.5, and fantastic. But unfortunately, it's not quite that easy, okay? It's not as easy as learning that number of words and then being okay to get the band 7.5, okay? Because it's, Tito, it's not just, and students, it's not just the number of words that you learned, but it's, of course, how you're able to use these words, okay? That's a much bigger trick than the actual number of words. So when you're thinking about using your vocabulary or lexical resource, you have to think of it as being able to understand it and use it in writing and speech dynamically, so not just in one way. That means you need lots of practice with that vocabulary. Okay, so having said that, to get a band 7.5, you need about 2,000 to 2,500 words, okay? To get band 7.5, you need to be able to effectively use 2,000 to 2,500 words, meaning they're different word forms, okay? So, for example, okay, adventure, adventurer, adventuring, adventurous. Okay? This is not 4 words. Okay? If you learn the 4 different word forms of adventure, meaning noun, person noun, contextual noun, and adjective, this is not 4 words. You haven't learned 4 words. You've learned 1 word, and you've learned 4 different forms of that word. Is that clear, students? Tito, Rajveer, Bhumi, Preeti, Elena, I want to see a thumbs up emoji or like a nod. That you understand that this is not 4 words. This is 1 word in 4 word forms. Okay? Thank you, Elena, for that yes. Okay? So You need to learn about 2,000 to 2,500 words and all of as many of their different word forms as possible. Also, you want to learn, so within this number of 2,000 to 2,500, you need to be able to use these words. And this is why, sometimes I think maybe a good question here is, why does the IELTS say lexical resource and not vocabulary? Okay, so this is where we could ask the question of what is the difference between lexical resource and just vocabulary? Okay, vocabulary is looking more simply at the language. So it's kind of looking at these as different words. But lexical resource is the more accurate concept. That's why IELTS uses lexical resource and not the word vocabulary, because lexical resource says, no, this is just one word in 4 different word forms, and your resource for the word adventure is dynamic. You can use it in different ways, okay? So with this number of 2,000 to 2,500 words, you need to be able to use these with phrasal verbs, expressions, idiomatic language, to name a few, okay? So you're not just understanding each word on its own, but you're understanding them when they are connected with other words as well, when you see them in different combinations. So, for example, okay, you know the word come, okay? Come here, right? To move towards a person or a location. You know the word across, okay? So, across means to go across, right? And of course, if you have good lexical resource at the band 7.5, then you don't just know this vocabulary, but you can lexically resource this vocabulary to come up with the phrasal verb come across. And at the 7.5 level, you know that this phrasal verb means to encounter. Okay? So at the 7.5 level, you don't just recognize this word, and this word, but you also know that this word and this word together creates the phrasal verb encounter. The phrasal verb come across does not count as a new word. Okay? So this would be 1, 2, 3 words, not 1, 2, 3, 4 words, according to the 2,000 to 2,500 words. So if you think about it in this way, the 2,500 words is actually a lot more. Okay? It's actually a lot more. And of course, very importantly, Tito, to get the 7.5, you must be able to use these 2,500 words fluently in speech and writing. So what does that mean? And this is my last point, Tito. And then students, keep thinking of your other questions because I'm going to wrap up this answer shortly here. But think about this. So to get the 7.5, you must be able to use these 2,500 words fluently in speech and writing. This means that a 7.5 level student likely knows closer to 3,000 or 3,500 words, but is not fluent with 1,000. Okay, that's my last point on that. So nobody is perfectly fluent with all of their vocabulary, myself included. Okay, according to Grammarly, I have a vocabulary of about 28,000 30,000 words, okay? But I'm probably only fluent with about 20,000 of those words. So 8,000 words I know and I can recognize, and if I read them or hear them, I can kind of, oh yeah, or if I'm really thinking when I'm speaking, I'll come up with the, oh yeah, that word can be used here, but I'm not fluent with them, okay? So here, the 2,500 or 2 to 2,500 for that 7.5 means that you're fluent with those words. Okay? All right, Tito. That probably wasn't, maybe you were kind of looking for a simpler answer, like 2,000 to 2,500, but I really wanted everybody to have a clear picture of what lexical resource actually means and what band 7.5 actually needs, okay? And of course, one last quick point is you should be able to spell most of those words, all right? So you should be able to have good spelling for those 2,000 words, all right? Okay, so good. That was a great startup question, Tito. Thank you for that. It was really fantastic. Okay. All right. Let me see. I saw a couple more questions come up. So again, members, a Q&A. Think about your questions. This is your chance to really get inside the IELTS exam, get inside my head, and just learn as much as possible. So Rajveer, you asked about the Kindle version of those books. I told you, yep, electronic and paperback. All right. Elena has a question here. I'm seeing that. Elena is asking, if I get an essay topic in task 2 and I have no idea about the topic, how could I overcome it? Whew. Yeah, I've heard that question before, Elena. It's a tough one, but we can do a little bit. Okay, so Elena says, hopefully that doesn't happen, Elena, obviously, but you know, if it does, right? So what if I get a task 2 question and I have no idea about the topic? Now, Elena, I want to be clear that I'm going to answer the right question for you here. Are you asking me that you don't understand the English, or you don't have information on that idea? So which one? Because those are two different questions, right? So don't understand the English that's used in the question, or don't have information about that particular topic. So which one are you asking me here? I want to make sure that I'm on the same page as you. The English, so you're not, or you don't have information, okay? Yeah, because sometimes students ask about the English aspect of it. So, okay, so Elena is saying information. I don't have information, okay? So what if I get a task 2 question? I have no idea about the topic, meaning I don't have information. Firstly, Elena, that shouldn't happen, okay? The IELTS exams are tested with sample groups to make sure that they are globally applicable, meaning men and women from age 16 to 60 from any culture should be able to respond. Okay. So the IELTS is tested, okay? They have sample groups before they release an exam, and they thoroughly test the exams for validity and reliability. Within the reliability testing of the exams, one of the parameters that they test for is exactly what you're asking, Elena, which is, can anybody who sits the exam and has English skills, so can understand the words, can they answer the question? Okay, so that's one of the parameters that they check. Okay, and they will not release an exam if they get back negative results. So if they get back a result where it shows that a 30-year-old woman from South Korea does not have access to any information on this topic, then they will not produce that question in the exam. Does that make sense, Elena? So, students, is that clear that the IELTS does test for culturally, gender-wise, non-biased information? Okay, so they really try to stay away from those kinds of questions. Okay. So what does that mean for you, Elena? That means that you should be able to answer the question. The chance of you having no information or no idea about that question is extremely low. Okay, it's extremely low. It's like 1 in a million that you shouldn't have an idea on that question. Okay, because they test for it. So you shouldn't worry about that. If you feel, okay, if you feel that you have no idea, chances are that the fault is in your thinking. And you may not be understanding the question clearly. Or you are overthinking it. Okay? So, that's what you have to realize, okay? If you're reading the question and you feel like you understand all the words, then and you don't know anything about it, then you should think, what did Adrian say about this? He said probably it's not with the question, the problem, but probably something in my thinking. Maybe I don't understand every word as clearly as I should, okay? Or maybe I'm overthinking the response, okay? So Rajveer, I see that point that you're making there, and that will actually feed into this. Now, how can you overcome that? Okay, so your first step to overcome this, what's called writer's block. Okay, there's an actual name for that, Elena. We call it a writer's block when a person has no idea what to write. It's called writer's block. So your first step to overcome writer's block is to paraphrase the question. Okay. Secondly, visualize the content. Okay. So Elena, remember this past week we've been working on this task too about should people do research on bacteria and viruses or not. So you should visualize it, right? Like see scientists in lab coats, in a laboratory, in university, looking at bacteria through a microscope. Okay. One really good step is to, instead of trying to think about all of the information around that task 2 question, focus on 1 or 2 specific examples. So I think some students who have been members for a while know about this, the up-down versus down-up processing. So most of the time when we look at task 2 questions, Elena, we try to look at them from the big picture. Okay, so we go from the general, and then our thinking goes towards the specific, which is often an example, like the coronavirus outbreak. Okay. Now, especially contextually, because we're all flooded with news about the coronavirus, it's a little bit easier for us to turn this diagram upside down. So this is the other way to think about information, is you have an example, right? And that's specific. And then you go towards the general. Okay. So if we didn't have this situation in the world right now with the coronavirus, most of us would be thinking about this week's task 2 question like this, about should we study bacteria and viruses? And a lot of us would probably say, yes, sure, because we develop vaccines, and then our example would be vaccines for the flu and antibiotics. But because of the scare of the coronavirus, we're much more able to think of the specific example and then go to the general. And this actually influences our decision-making process, where we now might say no because we feel that we're in danger. So context matters. But as intelligent thinkers, if you see a task 2 topic that you feel is difficult for you to think of and come up with explanations, examples, or answers, immediately think, okay, I'm thinking general, because this is usually what happens, is this one. So what I should do instead is try to think about an example. So see if I can think of an example from a movie, a book, something I heard from a friend, a parent, and then work towards a more general opinion. Okay, so paraphrase the question, make sure you're understanding what should be there or what is there. Remember that the Ielts tests these questions for all kinds of people from all different cultures to make sure that they're possible. So remember that part, it's very important. And then remember to visualize and remember to think from general to specific. That will be easy, but also remember to try to think from specific to general. Okay? So that's the best advice I can give. And you should be, so Elena, remember that you should be able to write for any task 2 question. Okay? Is that clear? Any other questions on that? Improving, so Elena's asking, should I improve my general knowledge? Absolutely. And I highly, highly recommend reading educational texts aside from Ielts. So a really good tip, Elena, for improving your general knowledge is try to find high school textbooks on biology, physics, geography, and read, if nothing else, then read the chapter summaries. Okay, so Elena asked another related question here. I'm going to get to yours as well here, Rajveer, is should I work to improve general knowledge for the Ielts? Yeah, I mean, that's always going to help you in life, not just for Ielts. The answer is yes, and I'll give you an even better answer. Read high school, of course, in English. So grades 11 and 12 texts. If nothing else, then the chapter summaries on a variety of topics like biology, physics, sociology, psychology, geography. Okay, absolutely. Of course, in English, right? In English. So most textbooks, you have the chapter summaries at the back of each chapter, and there's a chapter summary, and there's also a vocabulary list. That's for native speakers. So if any of you have had the experience of attending a school in English, you'll notice that the textbooks will always have about 30 pages of information and then 1 to 2 pages summary. And the summary will also highlight vocabulary for that. So that's really good practice, absolutely. Okay, let's see. I can see that... Yeah, so I see, Elena, your question, like global harmony due to international sporting events. But you should be able to think about that. So that's where you should think about World Cup soccer, people get together, they cheer for their teams, they spend time together in the same city, partying, getting to know each other, exchanging their cultures. So yes, international sports events like the Olympics and World Cup soccer definitely improve global harmony because it's a non-violent way to compete with each other and get to know each other. So again, Elena, there's a lot that you can think of there. Okay, you should be able to answer that question using the steps that I showed here. All right. Rajveer is asking, can I paraphrase the writing task 2 question while giving my response? Like the question is, some people say that in all levels of education, from primary school to universities, too much time is spent on learning facts and not enough on learning practical skills. Do you agree or disagree? Can I convert this into, most people say that in all levels of education, from primary school to university, students should spend more time on practical skills than learning facts. Okay, while giving my response. Yeah, okay, Rajveer, firstly, you'd want a little bit more paraphrasing, okay? So yes, you can paraphrase the words more, use more synonyms like post-secondary education, learning critical thinking, or real-life skills. So a bit more paraphrasing, I highly recommend it. But yes, you can. I'm going to throw a question back at you. Where do you think you can use the paraphrase of the question in your task 2 answer? So where do you think? And Bhumi, I see your question too, so I'll get back to it. So when you paraphrase, okay, so here's the question. Okay, Rajveer is asking, can I use the paraphrase of the task 2 question somewhere in my essay response? Yeah, and I think a lot of IELTS teachers teach this. Not so much the thesis students. Sometimes it seeps into the thesis a little bit, but the background. So yeah, I would say either in the background. So answer in the introductory or conclusion, your paraphrase may be applicable. For the introduction, it may be suitable for the background information, the definition of what you are about to explain. Okay. In the conclusion, it can be useful for the argument restated. Okay, so yeah, it's not wasted time when you're doing that. Yeah, Bhumi got it. So Bhumi's like, oh yeah, maybe in the conclusion as well. Don't use it in both, okay? So do not, that's really important, do not use it in both the conclusion and introduction. Okay. Now, this is for a lot of our viewers because I know there's a lot of information floating around online and in schools and by tutors and teachers. Some teachers and some tutors say the introductory paragraph is just a paraphrase of the question and a sentence like, in this essay, I will discuss the merits and demerits of learning facts and what was the other one that, how did you write it? Practical skills. Okay. learning facts and practical skills in university. Okay, so this will likely get you a band 6.5 maximum. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you write a perfect essay with this type of introduction, you're probably working towards a 6.5. One reason is the examiners are simply tired of seeing these template essays that everybody's producing. Okay, so you don't want to do that, all right? And we've proven that. So many of our students that come into our program and start with this kind of an introduction, and then we explain the correct introduction with hook, background, thesis, direct thesis. They change their way of writing. They use that new correct structure, and surprise, surprise, they go from band 5.5, 6.5, all the way up to band 7.5, 8.5. We see it all the time, all the time. Yeah, Elena, exactly. This is a kind of a foolish introductory paragraph. It doesn't reveal any information. It really doesn't do much for the reader, okay? So, but okay, going back again, Rajveer, to your original question, does that answer your question, Rajveer, so that you can use the paraphrase? It's not a waste of time to paraphrase it. Just think about it. How can I use it in the background? Maybe the thesis, elements of it, and then in the conclusion. So does that answer what you were? Is that what you were looking for, Rajveer? Something like that? Meanwhile, I'll take a look at the next question. Hopefully I answered you, Rajveer. So Bhumi is asking, is it necessary to have basic knowledge about every topic, or is it okay if I make up information for task 2? It's a good question, Bhumi. And so the question is, do I need to have, this is Bhumi. Let's simplify your question. So can I make up information for task 2 response? The answer, very simply put, Boom, is yes, you can. Importantly, your answer needs to be believable. But it does not need to be reality. Okay. So yeah, you can make it up. The one point to be careful about, Boomy, is don't trap yourself in a difficult answer. Okay. So be careful not to trap yourself in a difficult answer when you make up the response. Okay. Think of what most people would state or would say. Okay? Keep that in mind. But yeah, you can absolutely make it up. Okay, yeah, Rajveer, you're very welcome. I'm glad that answered your question. Okay, let's see what else is coming up here. I see there we have a few more of our members jumping in. Hi, Kana. Hi, Jung Hun, if I remember correctly. I can't read the Chinese characters, so sorry about that. But I see that you're in the chat. Anybody can throw out questions. Tito is asking, if we take a 4-second break while speaking during the test interview, is that natural? Yeah, it is, Tito. Yeah, absolutely. So Tito's asking, how much of a pause? Let me put it this way, Tito, your question, okay? So how much of a pause is natural in speaking without costing fluency marks? Okay. It's a really good question, Tito. So here's an answer, okay? Examiners are trained. So IELTS speaking examiners are well trained for the most part. Okay, of course, there's the exception, guys. I can't promise you that every single IELTS examiner is super well trained, but they are trained, okay? So IELTS speaking examiners are well trained for the most part, okay? So most of the time, for the most part. This means that they know with a high degree of accuracy if you are taking a break to think of an idea or taking a break to think of language, grammar, or vocabulary. You do not lose marks for taking a break to think of ideas. And this can be up to 4 or 5 seconds. Okay? In natural language, we do that. So in natural language, we'll do that. And this is how you can count it. You take a break, you go, that's an interesting question. Let me think about that for a moment. Well, I suppose that technology has had a great influence on the way that we interpret the world around us. These days, we source information from Google as well as from social media like Facebook. We learn about what scientists have to say through Google, and we learn about it through what our friends have to say through social media. This is how I'm gathering all of my information around the coronavirus, right? So it took me 5 seconds to think about that answer. And the examiner will know that I used that 5 seconds for thinking about my answer and not to think about the word or the grammar that technology has had a major influence, okay? Because that came out fluently, naturally. So they know that that wasn't the reason I took the break, but the reason was to actually think about the idea, okay? So if you take breaks to think about good answers, it's okay. If you're taking breaks to think about language, words, grammar, you'll start losing fluency marks. Okay? So, but Tito, the way we count it in English is 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4 1,000, 5 1,000. That's a 5-second count. Okay? And that is natural. It's natural to take 5 seconds. I wouldn't really take more than that. Okay? Does that answer your question, Tito? Okay, thumbs up. Great. All right. Next question. Canna J is asking, are there some tips for computer-based listening? Is it more difficult to choose multiple choice answers than paper-based because it is impossible to highlight keywords and there is no time to translate? Okay, the pacing, Canna, for the computer-based exam is the same. So, okay, let me summarize your question, Canna. Okay, so Canna's question is, what are some good tips for computer-based listening exam? Good question, Canna. There's a couple of really important points. All right. Okay. Firstly, make sure you can touch type. I don't recommend taking the computer-based exam if you cannot touch type. I highly recommend learning to touch type for the computer computer-based exam. That's what I'm doing, students. So when I'm typing on the board here, I'm touch typing. I'm looking at the screen. That's why I can correct my mistakes. I'm not looking at my fingers, okay? So touch typing means that you're typing and you're looking at the screen, all right? If you're staring at your fingers and you're not looking at the screen, that's a big, big problem for the computer-based exam. So if you can't touch type and you are doing the exam soon, then you should definitely choose the paper-based exam and not the computer-based exam. Okay, that's really important. So learn to touch type for the computer-based exam. Do not take the computer-based exam if you do not know how to touch type at least 60 words per minute. Okay? Because you have to be able to multitask. So multitasking is very important, and the skill of multitasking is important for success on IELTS. And if you're multitasking, which means doing more than one action at the same time, simultaneously, if your multitasking includes you staring at your fingers to see what buttons you're hitting on the keyboard, that is a big, big distraction from the actual information. Okay, so Canna, my very first advice to you is make sure you know how to touch type. If you don't, there's a really good piece of software and it's absolutely free. It's called Rapid Typing Tutor. Just it's a great piece of free online software. It's old school. I learned, believe it or not, students, more than 16 years ago, I learned how to touch type quickly with this rapid typing tutor. It only took me about 2 weeks, practicing about an hour or two each day. It's a great piece of absolutely free. It's completely open source. There's no sales pitch or anything with this. And it's not only a great piece of free online software, but it's also a great way to improve your English. With the words that it gets you typing, you start with just letters, and then you build up to words, then you build to sentences, and then you build to entire paragraphs and stories. So I highly, highly recommend it. So that's my first and most important tip for improving your score in the listening section for the computer-based exam is learn to touch type. Okay? Now, the next is you should have a paper and a pen. You should be able to, or you should have a piece of paper and pen or pencil to write down information during the exam. This could also be a useful tool for you during multiple choice questions in the listening. Okay, so that strategy that I've showed you in our listening classes where I just write down the answers really quickly, you might not be able to do that on the screen because you might only be able to select one of the answers like A, B, C, or D. But in that case, there should be a piece of paper and a pencil in your computer-based exam available to you. If not, you can ask for it. And you should be able to write that down and then type it in later. Okay? You should be able to do that. Okay, I'll have to check into that, but I think it's possible from what I gathered. All right. So, touch typing, that's my best tip for you, okay? If it's not working, go with the paper-based exam. Let's see. Preeti Yogi says, if the examiner asks a difficult question in speaking part 3 and we have no idea what to say in the question, what should I do? Preeti, really good question. It's been asked before. This is what you do. So Preeti says, if I get a question in speaking part 3 and I have no idea what I'm being asked, what do I do? Okay. Step 1. Okay. Ask the examiner. I'm sorry. I didn't quite catch that. Would you mind repeating the question? Hopefully you can figure it out. If you can't figure it out, okay, if you still have no idea, don't make up a silly answer. Then say, I'm truly sorry. I don't really get what you are asking. Can we just move to the next question? Okay, you'll probably lose a little bit of marks, but not as much as if you waste time, go off topic, speak off topic, your answer doesn't make sense, and now you're running out of time, and the examiner is going to keep the time short too because they realize that you're not understanding the question. So step 1, Preeti, ask the examiner to repeat the question. I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Would you mind repeating that question? If you still don't know, say, I'm really sorry, I don't really get what you're asking me. Can we just move to the next question? And then hopefully the next question's clear and you can give a good answer. Okay, Preeti? All right, students, lots of great questions today. I'm going to stop there. We've run out of time. Keep these points in mind. Keep practicing. If you have some questions that I didn't answer or something comes to mind, you can always send me an email. Send me an email to Adrian, Adrian, at aehelp.com. For all of our viewers to become our premium members, join our websites, aehelp.com for academic IELTS, GIELTS for general, and to become a member of our YouTube channel, you just click the join button besides the subscribe button. You're very welcome, Elena. Good questions. Tito, great couple of questions today. Thank you for those. Preeti, have an awesome rest of your day. Rajveer, good to have you in the class as always. Much love to all of you. And in 30 minutes, we will have one more class this week focusing on speaking part 3. Bye for now.